UK government has blocked Scotland's gender reform bill. This is a constitutional first. Darren, do you think this was a wise move?
Yeah, so it's the first time really that Section 35 has been used in that way, in a way in which to actually say to a parliament or a legislature in the rest of the UK, no way, Jose, right? This is Rishi Sunak putting his foot down. And he's led by Kemi Badenoch. Now, many viewers will know Kemi Badenoch from her time standing for the leadership of the Conservative Party. Now, she, as a black woman, right, is really leading the charge in the equalities brief. Now, I don't think of Kemi Badenoch as being some kind of swivel-eyed bigot, right? I think of Kemi Badenoch as being someone that wants to do away with victim narratives and wants to instead ensure that opportunity and equality are what are enshrined in Britain. So with that said, what would have happened is that you could you could go up to Scotland, or a Scottish prisoner, for example, in an English prison, right? These things happen. Now, that sort of thing could lead to men who do not wish women well, who actively wish women harm, who are in there for sexual offences, being a predator, whatever it might be, actually being in spaces with some of the most vulnerable women that society actually has. It is utterly bizarre. It is utterly deranged. And do you know what angers me? Is that women are being sacrificed on the SNP's altar and the Green Party in Scotland. The madness that I've just watched earlier today from a Green Party politician, in which she says 8-year-olds, I kid you not, 8-year-olds should be able to self-identify and change their sex. I think that actually the Greens in the SNP are sacrificing women's rights, hard fought for, Jess, in this country, and by this country I mean the whole of the United Kingdom, because they want to bust up with the UK government. They want to be able to say, look here, Scottish people, this is Rishi Sunak blocking the Scottish Parliament from being able to enact a law which its parliamentarians have voted for, when actually what we're seeing here is the UK government say, well, it conflicts with the Equality Act, right? And the Equality Act isn't a devolved matter. That's still in the purview of the whole of the United Kingdom, the UK government. So they haven't got a leg to stand on, but what Nicola Sturgeon wants, is to have this massive bust-up, this constitutional row with Westminster, but it's going to backfire, Jess, because the people in Scotland, poll after poll shows this. People in Scotland are not with Nicola Sturgeon on this issue. So it's going to be really interesting, and I reckon they're going to find they've bitten off more than they can chew, Jess.
I always do think it's amazing. I'm involved with many gender critical groups, for example, and the activism from these women who have other commitments in their life because they're on 30, 40, 50. They have family, they have children. But they realise this is such an important issue, whether it be for them personally, they don't want their spaces being invaded by biological men who won't make them comfortable. I know several mothers who are concerned about the books being taught to their 10-year-olds, saying how boys can become girls and girls can become boys, comparing it to hopping to different planets in this very childish way. They see the concern of that, and it's so powerful, the activism from this, and it's actually something that's united the left and the right. A lot of these women would vote SNP, I assume, under any other context, or would vote Labour. They're socialists, especially the ones in Manchester. But because of this, they feel like they feel close to the Tories, even though until recently, I wouldn't say the Conservative Party has done enough. It was only until recently that Rishi Sunak was able to define what a woman is.
Yeah.
But I think because of the political pressure, it's encouraged them to step forward. And I think that's so fantastic.
It is, and it's an interesting one. I agree with you that there are really powerful testimonies against this gender ideology by women. And, in my life, I've known women that have been put through domestic violence, right? And it genuinely breaks my heart to think of them seeking refuge, and I mean seeking refuge, quite literally seeking refuge, and finding that actually they're in there with the men that they're escaping, right? I cannot, for the life of me, understand why anyone thinks that's progressive. And they say, oh, well, Darren, this Met police officer who was just been charged yesterday for the rapes, horrible, horrible stories. And I saw online someone had said this Met police officer attacked more women than any trans person ever has. But I tell you what, Jess, you were you to self-identify as James, right? And tomorrow you went out of your way to go and sexually assault as many people as you could get your hands upon, because you've self-identified under what would have been the Scottish legislation, your crime would have went down as a male incident. So when we find that females are being assaulted by other females, it's logged as a female complaint, a female incident, a female attacker. This is a distortion of truth and fact, and that's what I take umbrage with. Wear what you want, Jess. Dress however you like. Put whatever makeup on you want. Call yourself whatever you like. But I will absolutely not deny fact and reality, which says that you cannot change your biological sex. If a man commits a crime, one as heinous as that of rape or molestation, it should be logged as a male crime. It was a man that did that. So I stand with these women. Socialists are not, Jess. I stand with J.K. Rowling. She's on the left as well, right? So all of these things have united us. People of this view, which I think is what I would call the common sense view. And I just can't believe that we're actually having to have these conversations, if I'm honest with you, Jess.
I think one issue that doesn't get enough attention, although it should do, is the amount of resources taken away from women. For example, I heard this story by the organisation Keep Prisons Single Sex, I believe it's called. And this woman basically said that the funding and resources, the space dedicated, that was originally going to be dedicated towards, I think it was a maternity area for women in prison, was now dedicated towards single room spaces for biological men who wanted to say they're women. I think an area which isn't touched on enough as well is the fact that many of these men want to take advantage, even if they're not trans, even if they have no gender dysphoria, there's certain advantages to saying that you're a woman in prison, whether that be a single space, a single prison cell, or just generally, well, if you could choose, would you rather be in a space full of violent men or a space full of violent women?
Indeed.
Which many aren't even violent, because if you look at women in prison, most aren't in there for violent crimes. And a lot of them as well have previous experiences of being victims of domestic violence and abuse. And then we're putting them through this as well, when prison should be a space for rehabilitation, for them to be able to recover and heal from that and move on in society when they get out. But I don't think allowing biological men into these spaces is doing that. I think that's hurting them.
Absolutely, of course it is. And I think you put the nail on the head there when you said that would you prefer to be in a cell full of violent men, or would you rather be in a cell with women? And if you're a nefarious character who is in there for sexual offences, of course you're going to be placed in a cell with females. But it's a bit like allowing a fox into a hen house, right? The hens aren't going to come out of that one very well. And the hens certainly don't want the fox there. So we need to actually just speak up and start speaking about these issues more. And I think people are starting to do that, slowly but surely. I've already mentioned Rosie Duffield MP, but I think as a Labour MP, she's actually stood up and made her voice heard, and she's received the most vile abuse for doing so. But I think the tide is turning, and suddenly voices like Rosie Duffield's, who, by the way, herself has had to seek services for things that have happened to her in the past. And when you've got a personal experience like that, Jess, you're not going to be told by some poxy politician that you're a bigot when actually you understand full well how important these spaces are for vulnerable women. That's it.
I think it's so important that we raise enough attention and focus on these areas where it does actually hurt women, because I think when I go out in the street and I ask people what is a woman, I don't think they clock on the actual importance of that word, what a
Hmm.
woman is.
Hmm.
So they're happy to just go along with politeness and use the right pronouns and stuff, because realistically, people don't care about the truth, they care more about making other people comfortable, I believe. But when you see the actual effects of gender ideology, which is allowing biological men to go into women's spaces, which is encouraging kids to make themselves feel so uncomfortable and insecure about themselves that they want to change their gender, I think they're the real effects, and I think that's what we need to focus on.
Absolutely, I think you're right, and in the cases of children, I mean, we used to just call that puberty, right? Not liking your own body. I'm sure there are people who, can be identified as genuinely having gender dysphoria, but I'm not convinced, Jess, that if you look at when I left school in 2009 and you compare that to the stats in 2019, you're talking hundreds of percentage points of a difference between those being referred to gender identity clinics and those being referred in 2019. It's been a social media phenomenon, right? It's been something that all these kids are viewing online and thinking, right, this is the silver bullet. This is what's going to make me feel good about myself. This is what's going to make me actually feel comfortable in my own skin, in my own body. Who wouldn't want to feel comfortable? But puberty is all about that exploration, right? It's all about coming to terms with who you are, coming to terms with what you're about. It certainly was for me. I know probably was for you, Jess. So I I just want kids to be left alone. Is that too much to ask? I can't really put it in any more, reductive a term than that, in just saying I've had enough of the ideology. I've had enough of the ideology that says that it's actually more progressive to say there are no women in the best artist category at the Brit Awards. It's all men because they abolished the female category. It isn't progressive, I think, to make kids go on treatments that we don't really know anything slash not very much about and what they could be doing to their bodies in the long run and about their development even. In some cases, puberty blockers, hormone treatments, we're talking about brain development. I mean, my God, could that be any more serious? But you can't say that, Jess. It's bigotry. So there are so many ways in which it comes down to protecting women, protecting kids. I care about that. I'm pretty certain the vast majority of the British public do too. So bring it on, Nicola Sturgeon. That's all I can say.